Okay, hi there everyone. Welcome to the Spiritual Capitalist podcast. Today I've got Jason Phillip, my good friend. He's a coach, he's a writer, he's an artist, and we had a fascinating conversation today in this podcast. We talked about whether or not snakes love, how to build the marketing for your business, how to construct your business like a masterpiece of architecture, all kinds of stuff. I think you're really going to like this show. Jason, how you doing, man?
Yeah, doing pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad that we managed to do this. People listening, there was a plan for me to interview someone else and they didn't show up. And now there's an easy way that one could respond to that and be like, oh, god dang, why did this guy not do that? I got everything set up and ready. And I thought, you know what, let's let's check in with my peeps, see who's around. And you said that you were available, and you were telling me just before we went live what you were about to do, and you had a similar spot. Is that right?
Yeah, I was planning to sit down and do some writing because I'm in the process of getting my blog kind of back online, and I've kind of been reevaluating where I'm taking that. So I'd kind of set the intention to just sit, grab a pen, and let whatever was going to happen. I would have been typing. That's my preferred medium, but my girlfriend had borrowed the laptop. So I said to myself, I very intentionally put myself in the frame of mind of just going with whatever was going to happen,
Yeah.
thinking to myself that, I'm talking about the writing, just let it flow because I'm doing it freehand and I don't tend to do that. But when I do, I get into a good zone with it. So just kind of saying to myself, when I notice kind of trying to direct it or trying to reflect too much, to just let it happen, whatever's going to happen. And then I got the message from you, and I thought, I just lit some incense, I said hi to my crystals, and I'm like, okay, just give me what you got, and there you are. So
Yeah. I love it. So you said to the universe, I'm going to go with the flow, with the intention that you had, and then it immediately tested you by saying, okay, so you're saying you're going to go with the flow. What are you going to do if I present this opportunity?
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like here's the flow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'd been listening to Melissa Griffin's podcast.
Okay.
And it was the first time I've listened to her. I always go to her for blogging and graphic design advice.
Mm.
And I knew her podcast wasn't quite along those lines, and I guess I'd kind of been avoiding it. It's called Pursuit with Purpose, and I thought it was going to be a bit over the top, cheesy, living your best life kind of vibes.
Yeah.
But I've checked out a few episodes, and it's really down to earth, really pretty honest,
Oh,
human
really?
stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the whole podcast format was kind of in my head, and
Mm.
I'm wanting to start my own podcast at some point. That's one of the mediums that I think what I had assumed was going to be one of my blogs. Now
Mm.
I think is actually going to be a podcast.
Mm.
So this is a nice kind of way to start exploring with different formats. And it was you that first got me to explore video content in the first place.
Yeah, because that's kind of how we met. We had a workshop called the Authenticity Accelerator, which now we're relaunching, and you're doing it again. The challenges
I,
again, so they must be it must be worthwhile. Yeah, and you were one of the ones that were smashing through the challenges. I think you got to challenge 10 quickest, and
mm-hmm.
obviously one of those challenges was to record a podcast, and it was tough for people because a the technical side to it, like how do I do that, and then
Yeah,
B, like what the hell am I supposed to say? And I put the pressure on, and I'm like, just do it, just hit record and talk for
yeah,
like 10, 15
exactly.
minutes about
Yeah,
something and expect that it's probably going to be crap and expect
yeah.
that,
And honestly, that's a surprisingly good attitude to take, to
yeah,
just do it
yeah,
and just accept that, yeah, your first attempt might be terrible, you might hate it,
yeah,
but you can do something with that, you can learn from that. And the
yeah.
point you always make about listening to or rewatching your own content,
Mm,
and kind of looking, where's the ego coming up? Where are you,
yeah,
where are you kind of processing something? What can you learn from? by reflecting and using the technology, using the platforms to help you do that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, when you do it consciously, it really is like a meditation, because as you're watching yourself talking about something, you can see the moments exactly that you drift. If you're conscious, if you're not that conscious, then what happens is you see yourself drift, and then you judge yourself, and then
Yeah,
that causes you to get demotivated and not want to do it again. But the
yeah.
magic happens when you start to connect to the fact that when you clip it out of the clip and then rewatch it, if you can just stick with the exercise of editing long enough to clip those bits out, and then you play it again, and without that bit, it's so much better. And you're like,
Yeah.
whoa,
You
I've
get a
actually,
very different
the points
story.
I made were good, the flow was good, the energy was good. And all I needed to do was cut out the bits where I drifted off into my head. And when I first started doing video stuff, like back when no one was watching and I didn't have any followers, I think I had like a couple of uncles that occasionally saw something, right? And they didn't like what I was doing. They thought it was silly. But when I first started doing it, I would watch back an hour-long video of me performing gorillas and yoga, talking about stuff, and I could feel that there was some magic in there. There was some gold in there that needed to be uncovered. But if I tried to post it in its unedited form, nothing would happen, and I would feel disappointment because I was like, oh, there's magic in there, but no one's seeing it. And then really what I've learned is that your ability to self-edit is the thing that determines how much reach your content gets. Because if you can self-edit those ego bits out, then even if you record an hour and you're only left with 10 minutes of non-ego good stuff, that 10 minutes is better to upload than the whole hour. And the problem is you've got to put effort and work in to reduce it from an hour to 10 minutes and not judge yourself in the process. And that's why the delete button is so good on the video editing app that you use, because it's as simple as going, bloop, away you go. And then what happens is that part of your ego is no longer quite as effective on you.
Yeah, it has a very interesting effect. You know, like I noticed when I was playing with a podcast and editing that with the authenticity accelerator, I noticed that the pauses in the way that I was talking, the repetition, the hesitation.
Yeah.
And as I was editing that, it was a weird feeling to acknowledge that and to see what was there, because it was self-doubt, it was insecurity, it was anxiety.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the video content and the later podcast experiments, I didn't hesitate nearly so much. I didn't doubt myself. I wasn't so in my head, It was interesting.
And I think that the first few challenges will have been really useful for that, because particularly the silence one, that one catches people by surprise at just how interesting it is. Because naturally, so for those who don't know, the second challenge is that you go live to the group and you don't say anything. So you just sit there in silence for as long as you can. And it's harder than it sounds. And while you're doing it, it gives your mind the opportunity to run rings around you and question things and throw things up. And I don't know this for a fact, but I'm willing to bet that everyone who does it immediately watches it back, and or at least part of it back, because they want to see what they look like while they're going through something that they knew was uncomfortable to go through at the time. And it just gives that third person perspective, and you can see just how much your face changes when you get taken over by the questions, by the doubts. And when there's not a story, when there's not a script, when there's not a narrative going on, and you just sat there, it's raw. It's raw. And so having done that rawness, when you got to the podcast, you'd already made your peace with a lot of it,
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean that the silent go live, some people really nail that. Like, who's that guy did like an hour long, like just that was incredible. But
Dave Bunger in Colombia, he runs a hostel, or ran a hostel. He's had to close the business down due to changes in season ultimately. But yeah, when he did his one, it was like an hour and 15 minutes or something of just him staring at the camera in silence.
And
Did you
it's
watch the
funny,
whole thing?
you know, you think you're in silent, you're in silence, you're not doing anything, you're not. But then when you, like you said, when you look at it,
Mm.
there's so much going on, and you're not being given a narrative to focus on
Yeah,
or anything. You're just so intensely self-aware, you know. But it
yeah,
kind of fizzles out with that.
yeah,
You know, it becomes so much more than that. And I think for me anyway, so much of that kind of feeling of being self-contained, of being only aware of the, you know, the bit inside here,
mm,
kind of starts to fade away, and it helps you kind of come into the whole thing a bit more,
yeah, yeah.
you know.
And when you think about like people like Grant Cardone, Ty Lopez, Gary Vee, they talk about how you should be on all platforms at once, right? And they talk about it from the sales and marketing perspective. But if we look at it from this perspective, each platform has its own vibe and its own energy. If you're doing something on video or doing something on audio or doing something visual on Instagram, it or doing something visual on Snapchat, but slightly different form of visual,
Mm,
what each of those channels are, they're opportunities for you to dig deeper into those parts of you, because it may be that you're really good on video and you've got no ego coming through on video, but if you try and do audio only, then all of a sudden there's a bunch of nonsense in there, right?
yeah, 100%. Like I get that with my writing.
Right.
When I write, so much of what goes onto the page is just thinking, you know, and
Mm,
it's so all over the place.
mm,
And partly it's good to, you know, I start one blog post, and by the end of it, I've got the seeds of maybe 5 or 6, you
yeah.
know, because I kind of get taken on this journey. But it's such a, what I realized is it kind of devalues what I'm giving to the person. And it's almost selfish in a way, because I'm paying attention to myself, my own thoughts, and kind of wanting to give them that instead of connecting and
Mm,
focusing on, you know, from a kind of, from their end of things, why are they want to read this? You know, that's not to hear my kind of cogs turning.
mm,
You know,
mm,
it's about making that connection, which I was missing for a long time.
mm, mm,
So going back in, I'm going to be looking at it totally differently. And you mentioned Gary Vee there. I saw something from him today, and it was about the way that he creates. He's got this kind of upside down pyramid, how he
oh yeah.
creates his content. So he'll have like a massive audio or video piece that he will then break up into segments that will then get filtered down into little
Mm,
points that go out on different social media channels, you know, in
mm,
different formats for different reasons to different audiences.
mm,
You
mm.
know, it's all about kind of picking those out, realizing the threads and who you're connecting with.
Absolutely. And I think for all of us as marketers, and no matter what you're doing, you're a marketer, because you
Hmm.
have to market to the network that you're trying to build, you have to market to the customers that you want to get, to the jobs that you want to get. For all of us as marketers, it's tough to know what to do with the content, right? Because
Hmm.
it's tough to come up with the content, but then once you've started coming up with it and you've tuned into something and it starts flowing, you become aware that it's worth much more than you're doing with it, right? And this, I took a lot of inspiration from Gary Vee and Grant for the way that they do that. They take a long piece of content, put it up in a long form, bring it into shorter forms, and split it up across other things. And I'm always conscious that that's the goal. And, you know, on my channel, I have coaching calls that I shorten down to like the key bits. And that's like my fledgling attempt to start doing that. But the challenge, I think, and you may have this too, the challenge is um, the number of steps involved to make it actually happen. Because you might watch a video that you've made and think, "Ooh, that little clip would be amazing on Instagram." But there's a number of steps that you need to take to to get it there. And by the time you take those steps, it might not be the same way that you felt it should be, right?
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. And I think that's true of like the whole kind of behind the scenes, the bits that are edited out, the process that, you know, that doesn't end up in the newsfeed. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the, like you're saying, the kind of scanning, editing, and the subjective kind of part you play in it, like the way you feel about it. Like you're saying, by the time you've got it ready as a post, all edited, captions done and stuff, you're like, you just don't feel it anymore. You're like, what was I trying to do here? And you've kind of lost something on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And especially if it's like a really long piece, one thing I've struggled with is, do I edit it as I go, or do I watch it all once and then clip it out later? And if I'm doing it as I go, I'm falling down because my note-taking process isn't good enough, so that when I do go back, the notes aren't.
Yeah. I think as much as it's time-consuming, it can be really valuable to see the whole thing, because it's like you take a novel, you look at any paragraph, any sentence, any word in that, and it's meaningless without the context of the whole novel. It is the rest of the thing that gives it meaning. And as much as it might have something of its own, sometimes taking it out can change meaning. Sometimes taking it out can, you kind of lose what you thought was there.
Yeah, man. So tell me about your different channels. Obviously, they're always going through flux. All of our channels, they're constantly evolving and changing. But for you at the moment, like, what channels are you using, and how do they differ in the vibes that you're viewing them with?
Right now, well, for the last, I don't know how long it's been, I've kind of pulled away from using any of my pages. I very occasionally will post something to my Facebook page, which is like, my kind of personal Facebook page, just because that's linked to my Instagram. But I've also got Reality Hack, which spawned out of the time that I delved into the whole network marketing game.
Right.
And that very quickly took on a life of its own and grew arms and legs and was like, dude, I want to go this way. And previously to that, the page and blog that I was running was Transpersonal Growth, which was all geared towards personal development, spiritual seeking, that whole kind of game. So very different vibe to what Reality Hack was. But again, it's kind of only recently that I've realized, like the last couple of days, I've been doing a lot of journaling, a lot of weaving the threads together, and seeing, looking right back to when I worked in retail, like what, 5 years ago, 6 years ago now, to my journey through studying psychology, kind of knowing that I wanted to be helping people, and then me going into blogging and deciding I want to work online, and then it's all these things felt so at odds with each other. And then it was literally the other day that I was writing it out, and it was jumbled, it was horrible, it was messy, but it gave me this sense of this horrible jumbled mess. It's like when you look at a woven carpet from the back, you don't know what the hell's going on. And then you turn it around and there's this beautiful pattern there, and you're like, right, I just had to let it unfold. I had to sit back, I had to flow with it. And now I can see the whole time. I've been doing something where the core premise is that I want to connect with people and help people. The context of that has changed. Now it's more than generic, I want to help people. It kind of went towards, I want to be a coach. And then as I personally got into the whole online game, into content creation, that became part of it. Now most of the people that I'm kind of coaching, they're people who want to start blogs or YouTube channels or little businesses. They're also very creative, spiritual people. So the whole thing is kind of woven together with, me just panicking the whole time. Oh, what am I doing? I've got no direction. And it's like, yeah, of course you can't not have direction. You just can't always see it. Your eyes can't see themselves, and at night you can't see themselves. That kind of, you got to just accept that there's something there. You maybe can't see it right now. It's, it's going to duck beneath the surface and it's going to reemerge.
I love that image of the carpet and how much of a mess it looks from the other side, and then you flip it over and you get
that's courtesy. Well, I'm kind of ad-libbing on Alan Watts.
Oh, is that good?
Yeah, his mum did a lot of weaving and stuff like that, so a lot of his analogies he's drawn from that kind of imagery. And yeah, it really, really struck me. So
Love
powerful.
it. Love it, man. And, weaving is one of those words. You get the word dream weaving coming from like shamanism and spiritual life. And
Yeah.
obviously my background is the physics one, and I talk quite a lot about the multiverse. And for me,
Mm.
dream weaving or life weaving or manifesting or whatever we want to call it is about choosing which of the infinite realities that are ahead you're stepping into in each moment. And there's a tree of infinite realities and your little trail through it, and you don't really know what's at the end of each trail. All you can really do is ask yourself, does this feel good as a spiritual being for me to take this step? Does this take me closer or further away from the higher ideal that I want? And if that higher ideal is to help more people, then the step will feel right if that's the right
Yeah.
way.
That's such a powerful thing to be in tune with, and it's such an easy thing to overlook because you're going about your day, and what guides you so often is just, damn, have I missed 2 meals? I should eat. Or
Yeah.
like, when am I going to fit in that next Netflix binge, or whatever it is. We're so kind of torn up in our attention because we're not paying attention,
Yes.
to things like our values, things like our feelings, stuff
Mm.
that's very, beneath the surface. You can't, you've not got, I mean, you probably don't have timers set on your phone to be like, checking with your higher self.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could be a good idea. Maybe it would.
Well, that goes against my kind of principles because, I was talking with one of my coaching clients earlier today.
Mm.
He said that for a goal, he wanted to have 60 days of practicing his daily ritual in the mornings and evenings every day for 60 days in a row.
Mm.
And he also had a financial goal, a separate one. And I said to him, if you reach that financial goal, are you going to care whether or not you did 60 days of that routine? If you got the financial goal and you got the secondary goal, which was about meaning,
Mm.
are you going to care that you didn't get the 60 days, or are you going to be glad that you got what you wanted? Right? And I said to him, like, tracking your habits is something that the brain likes. The brain likes to get all academic with it, and it's useful under certain conditions. So if you're in a job where your routines are fairly established already, and you're looking to add and subtract one thing at a time, then doing things for 30, 60 days in a row makes sense, and it's easy to track it, and etc. When you're trying to be an entrepreneur, you're trying to weave a carpet, you're trying to build a cathedral, you're having to be the architect. And I love that in Freemasonry language, the architect is like the name that they have for God, because that's when you're at your highest level, you're more of an architect than you are a builder. And so you're not concerned with the placement of every brick. That's being delegated to other parts of you that are perhaps more skilled at that role and more automatic in it. But you're paying attention to how it's shaping, what's the meaning in this building that you're creating, what's the image on the other side of the carpet that's going to be the end point for each stitch. So tracking what you're doing every day doesn't make sense for that, because you've got to be thinking in 50 directions at once. And each direction that you need to be thinking in, you need to be a different being, because some of it requires you to be analytical. Some of it requires you to be sleep deprived. Some of it requires you to be hungry. Some of it requires, so over the course of a given week, you might need 30 different states of consciousness in order to be at your peak productivity for the work that you've got to do as an entrepreneur, rather than the work that you've been given to do as an employee. So my advice to all entrepreneurs who's listening and watching, take the time to just trust your own body more, because the body has a better understanding of what it needs to do to prepare itself for the work that you've got to do, provided that you're being clear about what the outcome you want is, i.e., like this guy, he missed his routine in that morning. And I said, and he had a call at 7, a sales call, and he was supposed to get up like an hour and a half before it, and he got up like 15 minutes before it because he overslept. And I said to him, how did the call go? And he was like, it went really well. So why do you feel guilty and ashamed of yourself for not having met the routine standards that you thought? The call was good. You've had a good day since then. Just enjoy that.
Yeah. So what's all the trouble about?
Yeah.
It's like, I think it's part of it is people like security, routine. We like a metric.
Yeah.
Whether it's, I've done my 15 minutes of journaling, or, well, that post got 30 likes, we're in the bag, or, you know what I mean? It's,
yeah.
We like those little numbers.
Yeah. And as I say, it's useful in certain contexts.
Oh yeah.
But
when it's needed.
Yeah. And I'll give the guy credit. As soon as I laid it out like that, he was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I get you. So he knows. But it's a trap. It's a trap of the mind. And it's one of those many ways that the mind tries to wrestle back control over the bigger picture,
Yeah.
And
exactly, yeah.
And that's what I think most people struggle with most, is that they have a powerful mind, and that mind doesn't want to relinquish control over the daily activities of what's going on. It wants to be the one who's making the decisions, and
exactly
the one who's leading you. And
yeah.
As I always say, like, the big toe is just as much you as your sense of identity, and your big toe might want you to stop, or it might want you to jump, right? The movements in the big toe, that big toe might be sabotaging your sales calls because it's more afraid than your ego is. And the ego's like, why didn't my sales call go well? I didn't sleep enough, or I didn't eat the right thing. Let's try and figure it out. When really you could just stretch the big toe and you're fine.
It's funny, like when I first kind of came across all the gorillas and yoga stuff, there was, because I'm very kind of on board with that whole idea, the way that, memories, traumas, anything can be trapped, stored in the body. But I'd never come across a way of working with it that acknowledged it quite so matter of fact.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of trimmings that get added to it, and in the space there's a lot of people, and I'll be frank, there's a lot of people who take it all very seriously and say you've got to be certified, you've got to go through training, you've got to go to India and spend months with like 100 hours worth of training before you can do it. And it's like
all to get to know your big toe.
Yeah, it's right there. All you need to do is set the time to do it. And also all you need to do is the permission to do it. And in that 10th challenge in the authenticity group, the 10th challenge is me giving you permission to just take some time, and the challenge itself is write down on a piece of paper like 2 or 3 things that are really troubling you right now. And you don't have to talk about it to the group, you don't have to share it, but just have that in front of you and sit down and think about it and let yourself feel how uncomfortable it is to think about it, but then start to connect that issue with wherever in your body's getting uncomfortable. And that's it. That's it. Such a simple process. And
it's so powerful that going through that challenge for myself. And I remember we'd had a coaching call, I think just after that, on the same topic. And it was about one of the business ventures that I was going into. Well, I didn't even know it was really a business venture at the time. It was very casual. And I felt kind of undermined, looked down on, like I couldn't really take control here, or not even take control, but contribute, be acknowledged. And I went from that to then like really getting the ball rolling. Like, that thing's kind of, it's on the kind of back burner, but it's bubbling along. And I've been kind of contacting tour companies all around Scotland and setting up little marketing programs and stuff like that. It's been and it's crazy. And all it took was me to really acknowledge what was going on there. That playing off not being enough, and where that was sitting in me, and really being with that. It was crazy, man. Like the other day, actually, I thought about this when you were talking about judging yourself. I was doing a Gorilla Zen yoga session. This was for module 5, and filming myself. And I went through the warm up, and then I kind of, like, I think just being on camera
Mm.
I was just kind of putting my hands through my hair, kind of just tucking it behind my ear or whatever. And then just got really caught up in the motion. I just sat kind of fixing my hair for like 20 minutes and kind of realized what was going on there. It's like, okay, I'm being self-conscious. Okay, I'm trying to look a certain way. I'm trying to whatever was coming up instead of saying, okay, you're being obsessive about your looks. You're being vain. You're being this or that. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay, so you're being a bit vain. Cool.
Yes.
Let's see what's there,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just constantly being aware, observing, giving it that space. And it was interesting, because I hadn't been on camera in quite a while. My
Yeah.
hair's grown a bit since then.
And your relationship with your hair has grown quite a bit as well,
Mm,
and
yeah.
watching those, it's amazing that you've done that, because I know that for myself, it is uncomfortable to watch it back when you do a gorillas and yoga just to a camera. It's really uncomfortable to watch it back because you're just seeing the rawness of it.
Yeah.
But it's so powerful. It's
Mm,
so powerful because it just simplifies everything. And what it does, as you've been saying, is you, rather than just doing the tick or the comfort mechanism or the pattern of movement behavior that accompanies the thoughts,
mm,
rather than just doing it, you're repeating it, and you're just being present with how you feel at each stage in it, and you're aware of which muscles are involved in that movement, and then you can zero in on that muscle and be like, okay, so I do this when I'm having fears or limiting beliefs about, let's say, my ability to impress someone, right?
mm,
Maybe that's what happens when I'm in that state. So let's just go into it and feel which of my muscles are involved. Okay, so there's my wings, there's my lower arm here, and for each of those, what happens if I put pressure on it and I just hold it in that spot? How much more uncomfortable does it get? And how do I tell that part of me that it's okay, that it can just relax? And if I can figure that out, then I don't need to think at all about the narrative of the problem,
mm,
because the narrative of the problem is not the problem. That's the explanation that the conscious mind gives because
mm,
it
yeah.
thinks that it's the one in charge, when what's happening is that different parts of the body, the emotions, all sorts of areas of the body are communicating, I'm in danger. And then the conscious mind tries to figure out why you feel bad.
Exactly. It gives us like a surface level attachment,
Yeah,
like a kind of shortcut to saying, okay, that's that way because this, you
yeah,
know, without
yeah,
really acknowledging the rest of you,
yeah, yeah.
through your body or through time or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and people can spend decades in therapy
Mm.
trying to get that narrative even more elaborate. A lot of the time, you get really good therapists that are able to cut through it and bring them into their body and into the now. But a lot of it, especially back in the 80s, like a lot of it was just making the narrative more and more believable. And their goal was to map it out so that they could deconstruct it.
Mm.
My approach and your approach now is that narrative part is the irrelevant part.
Mm.
Just
Yeah,
take care of the body first, and you take away the need to explain why you don't feel good because the body feels good.
yeah. I'm reading a book just now called Going to Pieces Without Falling Apart.
Ooh.
And it's a psychoanalyst. Well, that's his training is in psychoanalysis.
Mm,
And he later got into Buddhism.
mm,
And the analogies he draws and the differences between the approaches are so powerful, because the whole idea of psychoanalysis is, like you say, to elaborate on this story,
yeah,
to
yeah,
make it really real, to pin it to your childhood, to give it a kind of developmental kind of slant, and to really make it concrete. And the whole idea of psychoanalysis is to strengthen your sense of self, your attachment to the story, your
mm,
ownership of it, whatever it may be.
mm.
And then the Buddhist angle, again, very similar vein to what we're talking about. It's like, you know,
Just let it go.
you know,
Yeah,
you can spend as long as you want in that. You can
yeah,
spend ages coloring it in and make sure you don't go out the lines and
But ultimately, the moment that you let it go is the only part that matters. So whether you take 10 years to figure out how to let it go, or whether you just decide to, you're going to end up in the same place.
Exactly. And it doesn't, I think people often feel like that would invalidate it. It would invalidate their experience, or, it wouldn't allow them to learn from it. But you've got to take a bit of that, because yeah, it's your experience, but then you've got to remember that your experience is also what comes next, not just what has been, and what comes next is a pretty blank slate most of the time.
Yeah.
If you don't drag that story into it,
And a lot of the time art is where this gets resolved, because if you're able to express in your creative pursuit what it is that is important to you about that story, then you don't become the slave to the story. You become a channel for the story to do good in the world, right? And that's powerful to do, for sure.
Yeah. There was one of the Melissa Griffin podcast episodes was with a woman who uses creative writing for exactly that process.
Yeah.
For a solid year, she got up at 4:30 a.m. and just wrote. She did that. She wrote 500,000 words by the end of the year, and she used it to process her own stories, to get to know herself. And she talked about her students who take their stories and they turn it into art, they turn it into dance, they turn it into understanding their partner better, and it's so powerful to acknowledge it and to let it be what it is, and not to feel like it's baggage or feel like it's holding you back, or it can be powerful, it can be part of your growth.
Do you remember when I did the word deconstruction of the word addiction?
I don't think I caught that one.
Okay. Well, I'll need to review it, because I may not recite it properly. But the word addiction, the question was, why is the word diction in it? Because diction is to do with speech and language. So I was like, why does a word that's about a chronic state of self-destruction, why is that word got the word diction in it? So I did my thing and I broke it down into the Latin roots and tried to step outside of it and see, how did this word come to be? And where I arrived was that the word addiction, when you break it down, means something like on the way to speaking. Like it's on its way to speaking. And when you think about how people get through addiction and get permanent healing from it, it's usually when they figure out how to talk about it properly. When they figure out how to either speak about it or paint about it or build a sculpture about it. And it's exactly what we've mentioned, that it's channeling the story into some kind of creation that can help others, rather than being in a continual state of on your way to speaking about it. Because that, when you're on your way to speaking about it, that's when you're aware that you're holding stuff in that needs to be channeled somewhere. And that's when you feel the need to then self-sabotage with whatever the thing you're addicted to is. And if the addiction is just being addicted to your own thoughts, it's exactly the same, whether it's alcohol or anything else. And that was powerful, realizing that the word addiction contains within it the cure for addiction. Speak your truth.
I like that, yeah, because this whole idea of being on the way, it's that separation. It's distancing yourself from it. And that that could be by overanalyzing, that could be by pushing it away, whatever it is. But then to just let it kind of be here now, speak it, acknowledge it, and let it become part of the going forward. That's I like that.
Yeah. And then once it's spoken, once it's turned into a creation, then it becomes a positive part of the story, because then it becomes that painting was how I overcame this issue. And I wanted to know earlier, when we were talking about the architect, I forget the name of the architect, but he's one of the current modern greats. And he said that if you go into your design knowing what it's going to look like, then you're not going to make anything worth anything.
Mm.
You know?
That's interesting. Yeah, that's got hints of almost Taoism. You know, the path that can be spoken is not path. That
Yeah.
whole, you know. Mm.
So I find with building my business, I like to think that building a business is like weaving a carpet, just like any other part of life. And I think you saw one of my flow charts for one of my funnels. Like I like it being interwoven and really confusing and complicated. And that flow chart is about a year old. So things are like 10 times more complicated, like more like 100 times more complicated than that. And I'm now in the process of making a new series of flowcharts. And I love it because what it is, when I've struggled, it's been when I've tried to map out the flowchart before the thing exists. Because then the brain takes over and goes, I know what it needs to look like. Instead, you just need to get accustomed to the chaos of it and get used to that feeling that you've got this multiple stuff growing in multiple directions. And you can't, as you said, you can't see how it all relates. And then when you make the flowchart or you do some kind of business plan exercise, or what you're doing is you're not creating stuff that's new. You're taking the jumbled mess of stuff that you've made and bringing it all together into the masterpiece that you're creating. And then each time you do it, so you create the masterpiece and then you dissolve it again and make it more complicated and more fancy. And then you recombine it and you've got a better masterpiece. And each time you do it, you feel like, holy crap, I'm making something good here.
I like that. I'm going to be rewatching this bit a few times because that just really hit.
Good.
The point I'm at right now, where I'm starting to see what's kind of emerging, you know. But it still feels like this kind of Hydra type thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I often like to think of it that like the ego wants to grow like a bamboo, but the best way to grow is like a tree, right? The bamboo is just going straight up and the tree's going off in all directions, but somehow like the tree becomes more beautiful than the bamboo. The bamboo is beautiful when it's surrounded by many other bamboo and you're looking at the whole forest, and that's beautiful. But a single bamboo on its own isn't a masterpiece yet, you know? And I think our vibe, I think the energy that one has to have to pursue creative work and entrepreneurialism as a joint operation, to be in that vibe, you've got to be more fractal in the way you grow. It's got to be
spread out. You got to follow, you know, where's the light right now?
Yeah.
You know, where's the water? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to be trippy just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of trips, you had any good trips lately?
As in holidays or like?
They're one and the same.
Fair enough.
Yeah, any kind of trip.
Nothing of the psychedelic variety, unfortunately, but I did go camping recently.
Sorry?
Nothing psychedelic, but I did go camping recently.
Oh, yeah. Up in, where was it? Orkney.
Yeah, me and my girlfriend.
Tell that story. That was awesome.
Oh, man. The first kind of day or so, it was pretty mundane. You know, we were expecting this kind of wild, insane place, and it was kind of just a normal town. So we kind of bust around a little bit until we decided that we wanted to go to Hawaii. We kind of scrapped our plans. We were going to go totally other direction, but we just thought, nope, we're gonna get the boat over to this big island. It had a big mountain on it, and I was like, I want to see the mountain.
I must get close to this mountain.
that was the motivation, man. That was it.
Yeah.
We got over. We had no idea where we were going to camp, where anything was. There was one cafe on the island, like on the north part, and that was it. We walked, I think, like about 5-6 miles, and eventually just found a little spot to camp across the other side of the island, set the tent up, and we walked, you know, went and explored a bit, and we didn't realize that there was a storm forecast for that night, and I've never seen waves like this. I've never seen rain like this. It was like we could literally see the rain. Like the rain was over there. It was like this wall moving towards us, you know. And then it was like hail. It just blanketed us. It was, you know. And I mean, I thought that the tent was going to be destroyed. There was like, you know, salvation was gone.
Yeah.
And
I love the idea that as the rain's coming in, you're looking at it, and in the back of your mind, there's this soundtrack like dum 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 dum.
so much. Like, it was beautiful from a distance, but then as that crescendo kind of came up, it was...
Yeah. You're like, some stuff's happening. Nature's coming to get me. I've got to survive.
And it was absolute. We noticed on the map that there was a bothy, and we just happened to have set up our tent like 30 feet away from it. And so then it was an absolute godsend. You know, it had a big, you know, stove. There was firewood. There was a toilet and running water. Like, it was a proper luxury bothy, you know. And it absolutely saved our skin. It was
free for the taking.
Yeah. It was amazing.
Have you told that story on your social yet?
No, I haven't actually. I haven't even posted many of the pictures from that. I think there was a couple on the Instagram, but no, I haven't.
You should.
Yeah, I should. You're right. I need to get back to just putting stuff out there, telling stories, connecting. You know, because I've been so just not engaging, really. You know, little bits here and there. Like, you know, I posted out the other day about how, you know, I've graduated and I'm going to be pursuing the coaching a bit more kind of vigorously. But yeah, I've been very kind of quiet on social after pulling out of the network marketing thing.
I think you're in that part of the cycle where you're re-clarifying things for yourself. You're getting a new idea of what the message is going to be. And I think the best thing for you to do is to just trust the intuition and do exactly what you did that led to this podcast. Go with the flow.
Yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah. So I tell you what, after this, get the pen, start doing some writing, and write about this story. Write about this story. And your goal is to share with people some kind of lesson that they can extract from it and use in their daily life.
Yeah, you know, yeah, I like that. And I just happened to have brought my notebook through just in case there was anything I wanted to jot down after this. So
yeah,
it's like, you know,
I'm up in your mind.
You are, man. You are.
I can't tell you the number of times that I send a message to someone and they're like, dude, I was literally just watching one of your videos. And I'm like, I'm a wizard. That's how I roll.
This is it, man.
Yeah, but that's the fun part of when you really, and this is where you get, the reason why doing Gorilla Zen yoga is so useful is because as you clip out, as you edit out those parts of you that are resistant to just going with the flow, it means that life becomes more psychedelic because you're aware of how much meaning there is around and how much significance there is around, and you're able to just extract what you need. And you're also able to tune in to realities that are more fun, and realities in which you send someone a message at the moment that they're watching a video of you. That's a fun reality.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
so somehow, because of the energy that I bring to my day and I go with the flow, it's like the universe conspires to make things easier for me because my body's not resisting that flow anymore.
Yeah.
And it gets trippy.
Yeah. It's funny the way that, you know, we talk about reality, and I think it depends the tone you say it in, you know, because you can say it with a very kind of, this is it, well, this is reality, you know, you got to face the facts, or you can, you know, when you kind of recognize the nuances of it and how much of a playful thing it can be and how dynamic it is, you know.
Yeah,
it gets tricky, you know.
It's like that phrase in The Matrix. The Matrix has a lot of esoteric wisdom wrapped up in it. That phrase in The Matrix, some rules can be broken, others can be bent. It's very much like that. And, you know, when I had Wayne Kealohi Powell on to talk about the principles of shamanism.
Yeah, love that video.
Yeah, man, that was so much fun to do. He's got such a good energy, such a good vibe. That was magic. That the shamanic approach to it is that anything is possible. So it's possible to levitate. The thing that determines whether you do is how much you believe it. And that's not in like a woo-woo, airy-fairy, I'm going to believe it and make it happen. You know, that's in every cell in your body believes it. And in order to defy gravity, gravity is a very ancient force. So to give a bit of contrast to that, if you're trying to defy a rule that your ego has set you based on what your teacher told you when you were 13, right? If you're trying, that's a rule that your ego said, this is a rule of life. If you're trying to break that, that's manageable. That's easy because you have to work with muscles, you have to work with your emotions, but that's not super primal. Gravity is a rule that dates back to when you, as a conscious being, were no more complicated than the atoms that make you up. So the atoms that make you up have memory of gravity being a force that they can't escape. So you don't just have to change your mental state, your emotional state. You have to physically convince somehow all of the cells and atoms in your body that gravity is no longer a rule that you have to obey. And that's fucking hard, right? But it's possible within the realms of an infinite universe. It's possible, but it's really tough. So levitation is one of those things that you don't get video evidence of. Because if anyone has mastered it, you hit the second problem, which is that you may be able to levitate on your own if you do that hard work and convince your body that it's possible. But if you try and show it to someone else, you've now got to convince every cell in their body that it's possible before it will be possible. Because in your reality, if you're sharing resonance with someone, their beliefs are going to affect how much you can do. So even if you can levitate on your own, as soon as you say, hey, look at this, you have to get, so if you get a room of 5 shamans who have done that work, maybe all of them can levitate together.
Yeah,
but
they're all dancing on the ceiling, you know?
Exactly. And then they come out and tell everyone and they're like, yeah, right, whatever.
It's funny the kind of parallels that I'm feeling between that and, you know, the more mundane realities, you know, like the number of people that I know that say want to do something like, say, a blog or YouTube channel or and whatever it is, pursue some kind of passion or interest. But there's a belief that it's not possible. People like them don't do it, or that they're not good enough, or you know, something like that. And yeah, then that suddenly becomes to them a law of nature.
Yeah.
That's as certain as the second hand ticking on the clock.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I've been there, I felt that intensely. You know, like when I first decided to start a blog, you know, I'm pretty sure we've talked about this. It was right after I had a really bad accident, like verging on like near death experience. And then for some reason my response to it was, I'm going to start a blog, you know. But the way that my mental health went after that, I was the most insecure, most anxious, just terrified of life, you know. And nothing could have convinced me that I had it in me to start a blog, to learn the technical stuff, to share my writing, because you know, to me it was valueless. No one would care, you know, and that was a law that I couldn't change. And it's bizarre looking back and remembering how real that felt, you know.
Yeah. And then the first time that you get freedom from that, the first time that you lift off and you're like, I didn't know I could do that.
Yeah, it really is bizarre. You realize how many walls you've been putting up for yourself. You know, you kind of realize that the control that you have, how subjective your life is, and how these barriers like are just what we can take them to be, and they are our perceptions, you know. So much of it's in the mind.
And one of the beliefs that I'm working really hard to shift in people, one of the laws of nature, is that it's complicated and difficult to break down the walls. Not. It's so much simpler than people seem to think, but it just requires them to do some stuff that they don't want to do.
It can be bizarrely simple.
Yeah.
Like, I remember this was when I'd first started training with my spiritual mentor, who was, you know, she trained in shamanism, meditation, other kind of areas. But one of the things that she got me to do was to learn how to change a situation by doing absolutely nothing. And at the time, I was, you know, I was back in Livingston. I was working with a care company, and as much as I didn't mind the job, I didn't like having to go into the office, sit around with people that I didn't know. I felt so uncomfortable. I hated it. You know, I was the kind of situation where I'd have to just occasionally disappear, go out, get some air, go for a drink of water, kind of just try and keep myself sane, you know. And then there was a day that I remember it well. I was walking up the hill towards the place, and I was, you know, I was kind of doing practicing some mindfulness. I was projecting love, compassion towards the very building, you know. I was just seeing it and wrapped in light and stuff. And I was in, didn't do anything differently. Everything had changed. Because it's just that subjective level that we're playing on. I let it not be frightening. I let it not make me anxious. Because there was nothing there objectively making me anxious. I was creating this reality that I just had to say, that's not reality. You know, and that was so powerful.
That was just the reality that for whatever reason you were deciding to see, and what you hadn't figured out was that you could make another choice.
Yeah, because I had these things in my mind that I'm not a very social person. I'm not good at small talk. I don't like colleagues. I don't get on with certain types of people, you know, all these kind of things. And again, it's those little stories that we kind of drag forward and we tell ourselves, and that we use them as filters on our day to day. And we say, I'm this type of person, so I feel this way. And that's, you know, kind of concrete. And it can be so difficult to let it be so easy.
Yes, yeah, that's well put.
Yeah,
to let it be so easy.
Yeah, to absolutely let go and to say it can be this way.
Yeah, because you've been wrestling with it your whole life. You've been wrestling with those types of things since you were a little kid, most likely. And so to let that go and to just acknowledge that it's so much easier, that then triggers a cascade of even more judgment, because you're like, why the hell did I put myself through this for so long? Right? But then the solution to that next bit is because it's what was needed for your creation to have value. Because in order for your story to provide value to other people, you needed to learn it all the hard way. If you'd been born knowing all of this stuff, you'd be a very boring person, you know?
Yeah.
So, and that comes back to the need to channel it into art, because that then provides the explanation that makes sense for why you didn't figure it out sooner, because you were doing the research that was eventually going to help create your masterpiece.
I like that. Yeah. I like
that. Cool. I see Cosmo has arrived.
Oh, hello.
We're having a bit of a tough time with him at the minute, because he's teenager going into young adult, and he's got a bit of aggression, you know. He's a young man, and even though he doesn't have his balls, I'll whisper that, the poor fella, even though he doesn't have his balls, he's a male, so he's got the impulses, he's got it may not be producing testosterone, but it's coming from somewhere. That male energy is coming from somewhere, because it's and he's lashing out occasionally at Luna, and so we're having to kind of lay down some territory rules and like play is fine, but some of the ways he's been behaving with her is like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? Come on. So I have to take a parental role with it, which is interesting. I feel like it's preparation for the
you got to teach your cats boundaries.
yeah. And they teach me too, you know. Cats are
There's
magic.
probably some learnings for you in there.
Yeah. Do you have
I
cats?
like the post. I don't know. I've never had cats. It's always been, well, me personally, it's always been reptiles. But other than that, there's always been a family dog.
Reptiles.
Mm.
Oh.
Yeah, right now I've got a royal python.
Ooh.
His name's Cuddles.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I've not spent much time with reptiles. I'm
Mm.
I'm curious. I'm curious to like how I'm gonna figure out to communicate because I'm pretty good at communicating with animals because
Mm.
of the work that I do, because I'm able to drift up and down through my own different consciousness levels. And so if I'm with a dog, I lower down to their level
Mm.
and just observe and like figure out how they communicate and how they feel. And
Mm.
the cats, they're like people to me because I know what they're going through and I communicate with them with the eyes. But I think a reptile would be interesting. I think a reptile would be very interesting.
Mm. They are. It's one of the things about them is how much of their own space that they want and need.
Okay.
You can't sit and, you know, with a dog or a cat, you know, maybe not always a cat, but you'd see them pretty much every day. You take them their food and water every day. You know, you talk to them, you clap them.
Yeah.
I don't see Cuddles sometimes for a week, 2 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, he went through they go through a strange kind of like fasting period over the winter where they don't eat. He hasn't before. He's eating again now, but before that, he hadn't eaten in almost 6 months.
Wow.
So there's a strange kind of, you've really got to let them do their own thing, you know?
What happens if you don't? What happens if you like pester them during it?
They'll get stressed out, they'll get ill, they'll start losing weight,
Wow.
they'll refuse to eat.
Wow.
They Yeah, so you've really got to, there's got to be such a kind of respect and a boundary there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was younger, I was a bit more in the habit of, if I had a friend over, you know, I'd want to get the snake out or the lizards out and let them see. And I would sometimes, but I would always try and say, you know, these aren't really pets that you interact with like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like as much as it comes off a little bit cold, there's a way that I kind of think about it, where it's like a cat or a dog will kind of cuddle you for warmth, for affection.
Mm.
You know, a snake will cuddle you for warmth because it needs to survive.
Right.
You know,
Right. Not because it feels good.
yeah, it doesn't necessarily feel anything for you.
And how do you find like communicating with it? Do you feel like you've got some sort of a emotional dialogue with it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, yeah.
What's
And
that
on a
like?
very strange, I, I don't know if I'd say, I don't know how I'd conceptualize it, but there's a definite, like, you know, when I'm feeding it,
Mm.
that's a very interesting process because again, you know, I only feed him every 2 weeks roughly. That's when he's eating.
Mm.
And when I go through the process of, you know, defrosting the mouse, and then, you know, you got to heat it up to a temperature that he'll recognize it.
Mm.
And then I've got to just hold it by the tail in his cage. And I swear he can feel when I'm kind of desperate for him to eat. You know, like that big period where he wasn't eating. If I'm desperate for him to eat, he won't touch it.
Really?
Yeah, I've got to hold it there, and I've got to just let go.
You got to just
Any
relax.
anything, and he'll come and take it.
Mm.
It's bizarre, but there's, so yeah, I wouldn't say it's emotional, but there's some strange reptilian connection there, you know. And
Mm.
when I've got him out, like, because I do bring him out, I talk to him. You know, if I'm cleaning his cage out, I'll let him sit in my hoodie pocket, or I'll wrap him in my neck,
Mm.
and I'll just go about what I'm doing, and he'll just kind of sit there, and it's like he's like, okay, this is, you know, part of the process. And
This is what Jason likes to do.
yeah. Yeah.
All right, this is part of how I get fed, so I'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a weird one, but yeah, love him. Yeah.
Wow, wow. Do you think he loves you?
No. Definitely not.
Wow. Let me ask you this question.
Mm.
Do you own a plant? Have you ever like raised a plant?
I own many plants. I've got a couple of little trees that I've grown from seeds and cuttings and
And
very,
do you love them?
oh yeah.
And do they love you?
I'd be closer to say that they love me. Yeah.
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 So
I found
there's
out recently one of my plants, because most of them are back at my grand's house, and I went back recently, and one of them hadn't survived that snow that we had, and that really hit me, like in a very surprising way, because I'd gone through such a journey with it. You know, I'd grown it from a cutting. It had gone through. I think it had been snapped at some point, but then I just kept nurturing it, and it grew a little shoot out the side. And it kept growing. And I thought, you know, when this grows, it's going to be a very bizarre shape for one. But nature almost took it through the process that I would have had to take it through to create a little bonsai by letting it grow, cutting it down, letting it grow. But this happened naturally. And then I was so proud of it, and it did feel like this connection. And then to go home and realize that it hasn't made it. It really hit home. But I mean, that's, you know, again, that was nature taking it through its course. Was that was it.
but you mentioned that it's almost easier to imagine the plant loving you than the snake loving you.
Yeah, it's in a bizarre way, but yeah, there does feel like almost more of a back and forth there than with the reptile.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to explain that, but yeah.
Let's take it a step lower than the plants. Do you love the sun?
I've never asked. I don't know. I have a strange relationship with the sun. I think because I burn so easily, you know. But,
when the sun's beaming in and you can just feel its warmth, and if you take a moment to appreciate that warmth, you say that you love the sun.
Oh yeah.
And then could you say that the sun loves you?
I think it could. Yeah. Yeah.
So love is one of those things that's a universal constant, in that whatever level of life we're looking at, whether it's a star or a molecule or a plant or a snake, love should be possible for all of them. Because if it's possible for a plant to love, which I would say that it is, I would say that, for instance, there's when you get trees, you get like grandfather trees that 2 generations of seeds down, the smaller one is growing up, and their roots kind of cross and they exchange nutrients in the roots. The grandfather will give nutrients to the younger one to help it grow. And why would it do that if it weren't for love? Yes, we could look at it as that supports the survival of the gene pool, but that's quite a reductionist way to look at it. If we,
yeah, it depends. It depends what angle you're coming at the word love from.
Right.
You know, because I guess when we were thinking of it on a mammalian level, the way that I would conceptualize love there, I wouldn't translate to a snake. When we started talking about plants, it's like we're talking about a different kind of love.
So what's the common thread?
Yeah. So yeah, that's the thing. What is it? It's, I don't know, connection. I don't know.
And perhaps it would serve us to talk of yin and yang briefly, because we know that yin and yang is like the basic foundation of the universe. We have energy and we have matter. We have male, we have female. And so when we're talking at our level, we know that male love is different to female love. right? And as beings, we're complicated, and we've got both male and female within, so we're capable of loving with the male and loving with the female.
Yeah.
But they're very different in flavor. The male love is like, come on, you can do better. It's like there's a better way to feel about this. There's a better perspective. You can grow more if you push a little harder and you hurt a little more, but it's going to be worth it, right? The female love is like, it's okay. It's okay. I understand. So like the female love is about acceptance of what is, and the male love is about helping you to believe that you can do better, that it doesn't have to feel that way anymore, right? So if we look at it from that perspective, the sun is kind of like a male love more than it is a female love, because it's giving out
it's
energy,
very,
and it's creating warmth, and it's helping you to feel better and helping the planet to feel better by creating more complicated life. It's like impregnating the Mother Earth with the energy required to incubate life that then the Earth gives feminine love to, saying it's okay to
receiving that.
Yeah. So if that were the common thread, that difference between the male and the female love, it makes sense for me to assume that all things that exist in the universe are capable. Well, first of all, the assumption is that all things in the universe are conscious, and that the difference is the complexity in consciousness. So if you've got a brain, it means that your consciousness is able to do more because it's more complicated, and it's got sense organs, and it's got blood vessels. But a tree has circulation systems, and a tree has senses. They're just more basic. So surely the tree is just as conscious, because consciousness is just an awareness of the here and now.
Yeah.
Right? But that awareness isn't able to engage with the material world in the complex way that we are. Right? And that's why we're higher order life forms. AI apps are able to handle much more data and information than our brain is. So they're like the next level up, but they're still conscious, because consciousness is just an awareness of the here and now. So then a rock is too. And tectonic movement is a form of the way that the planet Earth at the basic level generates life and generates growth, right? So if all of what I've said, if all of that nonsense, if that's true, then your snake must be capable of love, because all the other levels of life are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think when you look at it on that level, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what's difficult is understanding and feeling that love, if it's very different in form than the love that we're used to, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because like, we can look at love on any of these levels, and it does depend on what your understanding of it, what concepts are activated when you hear that word love.
Yes.
What does it mean to you?
And for me, if I were to just cut to the bone on it, if you can't currently feel the love coming from the reptile to you, then that suggests that the reptile within you isn't very good at love. Right?
Yeah.
And that to me would suggest some kind of prenatal thing happening, because the point when your physical form was similar to a reptile was when you were in the womb.
Yeah.
Now, if your mother went through some kind of trauma or difficult experience that got filtered down to you through the hormones and the stress of it, at the point where you were in a reptile state, then that can introduce a trauma that then blocks off an aspect of that consciousness. So I would say do some gorilla Zen yoga and see if you can step into the reptile within.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, man. You've got me. I was about to say thinking, but no.
I've got you feeling, haven't I?
Yeah, that's when you know. Yeah, no, yeah, I'm gonna be digging into that one.
Good, good, good. And I'm looking forward to hearing how digging into that starts to evolve your relationship with what was his name?
Cuddles.
Cuddles, with Cuddles.
That's his pet name. His proper name is Nabari.
Okay.
So that's the term that they use for on a bonsai tree, the roots that are above the surface, that are very representative of stability and strength and that kind of grounding. So that, and then Nabari, because he's a big chunky snake, he's incredibly strong. Like when you're holding him, they're just muscle. You can feel that power. So yeah, I need to go have a conversation with him. We need to connect.
yeah, man. You need to feel him more. Yeah. And what's going to happen is that you working on that part of him, of yourself, is going to unlock new abilities for yourself, because people often talk about the reptile mind, right? With the limbic system and all of this, and they get very academic with it. But they often talk about the reptile mind as being something that you don't really want in your life, because
that's a devolved thing.
It's treated as if it's something that you're stuck with as a human, and you've got to try and overcome. And I think the real truth is that the reptile in you is just as valuable as every other part. It's just as valuable as the gorilla in you and the God in you and every other part of you. And it has its own unique abilities that, if you can tune into, make you a more powerful being. And if you're afraid to tune into the reptile within, then it blocks you off from accessing that power. And then what happens whenever you block yourself off from accessing a power that you have? What happens is that you end up using that power without your knowledge, and you end up causing more harm than good. Right? And this is going to get into some stuff that I don't normally talk about with folks until I feel that they're able to sort of appreciate it without getting too triggered by it. But the reptile is like the inner psychopath in a way, right?
I was just thinking that when they talk about sociopaths, it's always that reference to the reptile brain and that lack of empathy, that inability to love.
And the truth is that we've all got that reptile within. And if we're not able to step into that operating mode because we're afraid that we're going to cause harm, or that's going to make us a psychopath, right? If we're resistant to acknowledging that part of ourselves, then we're going to behave in psychopathic ways under certain conditions, and we're going to cause a lot of shit, right?
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So I'm a big believer that you need to be able to step into that before you can have control over it and use it for good, instead of accidentally using it and causing a great deal of harm. But using that for good is something that people don't like to imagine.
Yeah, absolutely, because you think it can only be bad.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have to lock it away. You have to not acknowledge it. But then something that you keep in the shadows, it operates in the shadows,
Yeah. And it's like narcissism, a little bit of narcissism, the ability to be narcissistic at times is useful.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
But you can't, if you become a slave to it, then you've got a problem.
Then you'll be subject to all those BuzzFeed articles,
Yeah. So good, man.
This is gone in an interesting direction.
Yeah. This is good
Our
fun.
conversations tend to, though.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like I'm going to have you on this podcast more. Definitely. I like this.
Nice.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, probably wise to wrap it up at this point. Thanks for being here, man. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for bringing your perspective, bringing your vibe, and tell anyone who's watching how they can get hold of you.
Yeah. Right now, the best way is probably on my personal page, which is if you just look up Jason Phillip.
Okay.
That's probably the best way. Reality Hack is going to likely be a bit more active soon. So, yeah.
Cool. So that's do you mean your personal profile on Facebook or the page?
The page. Yeah.
Okay,
The
cool.
personal profile is probably more direct, but
Cool.
any kind of content or anything like that will be on the page. It's all connected to my profile anyway.
Nice, nice. I'll drop the links in the description. And your Instagram is?
The Instagram is Living Stranger.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah,
cool.
That was a tribute to the very first blog that I started.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again for being here. Thank you. And I'll say that again, for being here in the now. It's a pleasure to be here with
you. Yeah.
And thank you everybody for listening in, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Drop some comments and let us know if any parts were particularly like interesting or triggering, or you know.
Yeah, it's been quite a winding path. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Peace and love, my brother. I look forward to speaking with you again very soon. Let's do this again.
Definitely, man. Okay.
All right.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.